When a woman stops being nice, she shines a light into her shadow, reclaiming truths long hidden in polite silence. In that moment, her authenticity burns brighter than the masks she once wore. Carl Jung. Imagine for a moment that you're standing at the edge of a serene lake. The surface is perfectly still, glassy, reflective, calming. Now picture tossing a stone into that mirror. Ripples spread out, disturbing the perfect calm. In the same way, when a woman stops being nice, she has, in effect, tossed a stone into the surface of her own psyche, and the first thing to rise from the depths is the shadow. In Jungian psychology, the shadow represents the parts of ourselves we've pushed into the hidden corners of the mind. These are the emotions, desires, and traits that we sense would be unacceptable to others, or even unacceptable to our own ideal self. Think of it like a dusty attic we lock away and rarely visit. Over time, the attic grows cluttered, old hurts, simmering frustrations, forbidden dreams, and impulses labeled too much or too ugly to show the light of day. When a woman decides that she will no longer play the role of the perpetual peacemaker, smiling through hurt, nodding through disagreement, minimizing her own needs, she opens the door to that attic. The moment of no more niceness shatters the facade that kept those hidden pieces locked away. What emerges is often intense, a surge of anger at being unheard, grief over neglected needs, and sometimes fear at the raw power of these recovered feelings. This rising of the shadow can feel unsettling. The first reaction is often surprise. Where did this fierce voice come from? In reality, it has always been there, muffled by polite smiles and, yes, of course, but because it lived in the unconscious, it didn't have permission to speak. The unconscious is like the deep waters beneath our lake's surface, vast, mysterious, and influential, even when invisible. When the lid is lifted, those dark currents pull at us, demanding attention. Consider Maria, a client I once saw in my Zurich office. She spent years deferring to her family's wishes, a career they approved of, a partner they liked, a life path set by others. Outwardly, she was nice, agreeable, accommodating, conflict-averse. But inside, resentment festered. One day, after her parents criticized yet another choice, she simply said, "No more." In that moment, her shadow surfaced. Tears of hurt she'd long denied, a fierce declaration of her own needs, and a trembling realization that she had been invisible even to herself. That first encounter with the shadow can feel like a storm. You might lash out at someone who merely asks a question, or you might collapse in tears over a small disappointment. These reactions aren't failures. They're the psyche's way of bringing light to what was hidden. By resisting polite suppression, the shadow demands integration. This is where the concept of integration becomes vital. Integration is the process of bringing these disowned parts into conscious awareness, not to let them run wild, but to understand and relate to them with compassion. Integration begins with acknowledgement. When you catch yourself in an unexpected outburst, say snapping at a friend for a minor oversight, pause and ask, "What am I really feeling?" Perhaps it isn't anger at the friend, but exhaustion from always prioritizing others. By naming the true emotion, hurt, fear, longing, you give yourself a chance to respond rather than react. In this way, the shadow transforms from a hidden saboteur into a trustworthy informant, showing us where our boundaries have been crossed or where our true desires lie. As the shadow integrates, you'll notice that your energy shifts. The fierce ripples calm into a steady strength. Decisions become clearer, because they're informed by your whole self, not just the nice mask. Relationships deepen as you're no longer seeking approval, but genuine connection. The voice that once cried out in resentment now becomes a guide. This is what I want. This is what I need. This is not acceptable. Yet this process isn't one and done. Just as the lake can become still again, the mind can again fall into old patterns. That's why ongoing self-reflection is so important. Simple practices, journaling your feelings, checking in with your body when you feel tension or speaking honestly in small matters help keep the attic door from slamming shut again. Over time, the shadow becomes less of a frightening specter and more of an inner ally, enriching your creativity, resilience, and authenticity. When a woman stops being nice, she does more than express anger or set boundaries. She summons the shadow into the light. That emergence is the beginning of a journey toward wholeness, a journey where every hidden piece, once honored and understood, becomes a source of strength rather than shame. And in that wholeness, true kindness is reborn, not as a mask, but as a genuine, empowered expression of the fully realized self. Have you ever caught yourself feeling irritated with someone over the smallest thing, only to realize later that the real upset was rooted deep within you? This is the art of projection, a basic but powerful defense mechanism of the human psyche. In Jungian terms, projection occurs when we unconsciously ascribe our own unwelcome thoughts, feelings, or motives to someone else. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack filled with stones. Each stone represents a hidden emotion, frustration, envy, or fear. Rather than acknowledge the weight in your own bag, you place it on someone else's shoulders. Suddenly, their casual comment feels like a deliberate slight, or their calm demeanor seems suspicious. In these moments, we're watching our inner burdens take on a life of their own, playing out in other people. This process begins in the unconscious, that hidden reservoir beneath our conscious awareness. The unconscious houses everything we've deemed too dangerous or shameful to face directly. Our anger at a friend for neglecting us, our fear of not measuring up, or our secret longing for attention. Because these feelings threaten our self-image or social standing, we push them out of sight. Yet the psyche is resolute. What isn't integrated will find expression. Thus, unrecognized emotions bubble up in the form of projection, causing us to see in others what truly belongs inside ourselves. Consider Eva, who always felt a pang of jealousy when her sister succeeded. Rather than accept her envy, Eva would accuse her sister of being arrogant. Whenever her sister celebrated a personal win, Eva's tone sharpened and her criticism grew loud. Only through self-reflection and guided dialogue did Eva realize she was projecting her own longing for recognition onto her sister. By naming her envy, she reclaimed the emotion and, in turn, genuinely celebrated her sister's achievements without feeling diminished. Why does the psyche resort to projection instead of open admission? The answer lies in self-preservation. Admitting to anger or envy feels threatening, so the mind deflects these uncomfortable states onto another person. In this way, the ego maintains its sense of moral integrity. I'm not the one who's greedy, that's them. But this temporary relief comes at a cost. Relationships strain under the weight of misdirected blame, and we miss the chance to heal the real wound within. Recognizing projection requires a willingness to pause and ask, could this feeling actually originate in me? When you notice a strong reaction, like feeling unjustly accused or irrationally fearful, use it as a clue. Instead of responding defensively, take a breath and reflect, what might I be avoiding? Journaling can help here. Write down the incident, your immediate emotions, and then explore whether those emotions echo past experiences or unmet needs. Over time, this practice builds the muscle of self-awareness, allowing you to catch projection in action. As you grow more attuned, you'll discover that the energy behind projection can be transformed. That same fiery spark that made you lash out in anger can be repurposed to fuel creative projects, strengthen personal boundaries, or ignite compassionate action toward yourself. By owning your feelings, you break the illusion that someone else is to blame for your discomfort. You shift from reacting to responding, choosing consciously how to engage with your inner world. Integration of projection is not a one-time event, but a lifelong practice. In Jungian psychology, this continual process is part of individuation, where the goal is to bring the conscious and unconscious into harmony. Each moment you notice a projection and choose self-inquiry, you weave another thread in the tapestry of a whole and resilient self. When a woman stops being nice and confronts her own projections, she reclaims her emotional power, She no longer hands over her feelings for others to carry. Instead, she learns to recognize and integrate every facet of her psyche, light and shadow alike. In doing so, her interactions become more authentic, her relationships more honest, and her life richer for embracing the full spectrum of her human experience. Have you ever noticed how sometimes your voice inside you can sound like someone else entirely, whispering doubts, urging courage, or guiding your choices with a tone you don't recognize as your own? I recall sitting in my study as a client described an inner argument playing out in her mind, a tug-of-war between tenderness and steel. In Jungian psychology, this inner dialogue is shaped by the anima in men and the animus in women, those living, breathing figures in our unconscious that embody the opposite gender's qualities. When a woman stops turning her kindness into a cloak and instead speaks her mind with clarity, she is often hearing her animus speak up for the first time. The animus is that inner masculine presence, assertive, logical, direct, that has been waiting patiently beneath layers of polite accommodation. It represents the qualities traditionally associated with maleness: confidence, decisiveness, and the courage to stand alone. In contrast, the anima is the inner feminine in men, but for our discussion it's the woman's inner masculine, the animus, that comes to life. For much of her life, a woman may have been socialized to prioritize harmony above all else. She learns to soften her voice, to smile when she's sighing inside, and to lighten her words so they won't rock someone else's boat. This can create a disconnect. Her outward comportment says yes, while her animus is screaming no. The tension builds like a river dammed until finally the dam breaks, and the flow of authentic expression cannot be contained. At that moment of breakthrough, she may feel a surge of inner strength, an unexpected solidity in her words. That is her animus taking the steering wheel. Suddenly she articulates what she truly thinks, asks for what she truly needs, and refuses what she truly can't accept. It's not about becoming abrasive. It's about becoming whole. By allowing the animus to speak, she integrates a crucial part of her psyche, the totality of conscious and unconscious elements of the mind, rather than letting that part remain shadowed. Consider Layla, who had long struggled with voicing her opinions at work. Whenever she tried to offer a different perspective, her words would soften mid-sentence, apologetic qualifiers would slip in, and she would end up reinforcing the very points she disagreed with. Internally, she felt frustration and shame, but externally, she maintained that nice mask. Over time, her animus began to stir. It grew tired of being silenced and began nudging her during meetings. One day, during a team discussion, a project was derailed by an impractical suggestion. Layla felt the familiar urge to speak up but paused until her animus insisted. She took a breath and said in a clear, firm tone, "I see where you're coming from, but here's another approach that might work better." Her heart raced. Her palms sweated, but her words landed with confidence. Afterward, she was surprised by how natural it felt and how respected she was. Her animus had broken through the old pattern of niceness, guiding her to express her truth. This inner dialogue between the socialized self and the animus is not always seamless. At first, the animus may come across as harsh or blunt, because it has been silenced for so long it doesn't know gentleness. It may feel like you're borrowing someone else's voice, but with practice, the tone shifts. You learn to balance firmness with empathy, directness with warmth. This harmonized voice is the hallmark of true individuation, the process of becoming a fully realized individual by integrating all parts of the psyche. Integration of the animus also deepens creativity and intuition. You begin to trust your logical insights and assertive ideas without betraying your compassionate side. Decisions become more balanced, drawing on both analysis and empathy. Relationships transform because you're no longer shrinking your presence to fit someone else's comfort. You're inviting others to engage with the full radiance of your being. To foster this integration, try listening inwardly when you feel torn between being nice and wanting to speak up. Ask yourself, what is my animus urging me to say or do right now? You might journal the exact words your inner masculine voice offers, even if they feel unfamiliar. Over time, you'll notice that these words start coming easily into conversation. You can also practice in low-stakes situations. Express a preference without apology, set a minor boundary, or finish a sentence you would have left hanging. Each act strengthens the animus and builds your confidence. Remember, the goal is not to silence the caring, harmonious aspects of your nature that would simply create a new imbalance. Rather, it's to give voice to the animus so that it and your naturally nurturing side work in concert. When that happens, your kindness is no longer a mask but a genuine expression of strength, compassion, and authenticity. By engaging in this dialogue with the animus, a woman does more than stop being merely nice. She steps into the full spectrum of her psychological power, weaving together sensitivity and assertiveness into a single, resonant voice. And in that voice, she finds both freedom and integrity, leading her toward the most authentic expression of herself. When a woman steps away from the role of perpetual nice, one of the most profound changes she enacts is the carving out of boundaries, those invisible lines that protect her emotional and psychological well-being. Boundaries are not walls erected to isolate. Rather, they are clear markers of what she will accept and what she will not. Imagine a dance floor. Without defined edges, everyone drifts into everyone else, and the music becomes a muddled hum. By setting boundaries, she defines her own space in the rhythm of life, ensuring that her needs, values, and energy are honored rather than trampled. Establishing boundaries often feels unfamiliar at first, because society frequently praises self-sacrifice, and politeness above all. A woman who has long equated nice with good may fear that drawing a firm line will cast her as selfish or unkind. Yet in Jungian psychology, this hesitance reflects an over-identification with the persona, the social mask we present, to the world. When the persona dominates, we lose sight of our inner truth and conform to roles that others prescribe. Setting boundaries, then, becomes an act of reclaiming the authentic self, peeling back layers of performance to reveal genuine wants and feelings. As boundaries strengthen, she naturally advances along the path of individuation, the journey of becoming a fully realized individual. Individuation is not a one-time achievement but a lifelong unfolding, where the conscious mind learns to integrate with the rich material of the unconscious. In practical terms, this might look like saying no to requests that drain her, asking for support when she needs it, or choosing solitude over superficial social obligations. Each boundary honored is a brick laid in the foundation of her unique identity, allowing her to stand in her own power without the fear of toppling. This process reveals how the shadow and animus, or anima, can either support or undermine her growth. A woman who ignores her priorities because she worries about upsetting others feeds her shadow, which then erupts in passive-aggressive outbursts or unexplained fatigue. Conversely, when she acknowledges the promptings of her animus, that inner voice urging assertiveness, she can use it to reinforce healthy limits. The interplay of these unconscious forces shapes the contours of her boundaries, ensuring they are neither brittle nor barricades. Honoring boundaries also reshapes relationships. Friends, family, and colleagues learn to engage with her as a whole person rather than a perpetual caretaker. This shift can be startling for others. They may test her new limits or react with confusion. Yet it is precisely in these moments that the depth of connection grows. When she no longer sacrifices her truth for the sake of harmony, interactions become more genuine, less transactional. The quality of her relationships improves because they now rest on mutual respect rather than habitual compliance. In the wider context of her life's work, individuation fuels creativity and purpose. By freeing herself from the constant need to please, she accesses deeper wells of inspiration. Projects that once felt impossible become engaging challenges because she is no longer hinging her worth on external approval. The self, the totality of conscious and unconscious, begins to guide her choices, offering subtle nudges toward activities and beliefs that resonate with her core essence. As a result, her contributions to the world carry greater authenticity and impact. Of course, maintaining boundaries is an evolving practice. She may sometimes slip back into old patterns, especially under stress or when facing authority figures. At such times, gentle self-inquiry serves as a compass. Where did I compromise my truth? Or, which boundary did I let blur? Simple. Rituals like checking in with her body for tension, journaling unmet needs, or rehearsing assertive phrases help recalibrate her stance. Over months and years, these micro-adjustments coalesce into an unshakable posture of self-respect. Ultimately, when a woman stops being merely nice and commits to defining her boundaries and pursuing individuation, she embodies a new paradigm of kindness. It is a kindness that flows from wholeness, not from obligation, from self-knowledge, not from fear of rejection. In this integrated state, she stands as both a guardian of her inner world and a generous presence in the outer world, proof that true compassion begins with honoring the sacred space of one's own soul.